It's been a little over a month now since the Steam Deck was released. And as you all know, quite a few people have theirs already, including 2 within High-Tech Lowlife. Not me, of course, but you know. And it's been causing quite the buzz as of recently. It's an amazing little kit that lets you play all of your PC games, as well as emulators too, really. And though the experience is good, it's not perfect, and here's what I want changed. If you like our content, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, join the Discord, and sign up for notifications. The first is user plugins for game mode. So yes, desktop mode is infinitely customizable, but game mode really isn't. And one way we want to customize it is to add extensions, or plugins rather, like the ability to control Spotify, or perhaps respond to Discord messages directly in game mode without having to switch applications. That sounds like the dream. So believe it or not, external developers have found a way to load plugins into the Steam Deck. And so far there's only 2 available plugins currently. One plugin is the ability to control Parity, a self-hosted music server that you basically host yourself on a server, or in this case, a Steam Deck. And the second plugin is an SSH toggle, allowing you to remote into your Steam Deck from a different computer with the command line. There's plenty of uses for this, and you can even facilitate file transfers via the command line if you so desired. And while there's no documentation on how to create plugins for the Steam Deck, there is a template that you can use to get started. And yes, while this does require developer mode, this modification is in fact persistent. It survives system updates as well as system reboots, and it only uninstalls when you tell it to, basically, or you reinstall the entire OS. And most importantly, it doesn't require you to disable read-only on your system partition, so it should in theory be safe to install, though don't quote me on that. So if such a framework exists, why are you even adding this to the list, you might ask? Well, it's simple really. I feel like it would do a lot better as an official Valve feature. Like, imagine these plugins that you can just download and install directly on your Steam Deck without having to muck around with a framework. Even better, imagine if these plugins were installable via Steam Workshop. That would be pretty sick, wouldn't it? Next is per game performance profiles. So what do I mean by this? Well, the quick access menu, you know, the triple dots button, gives you access to a bunch of settings that lets you tweak the performance of your game and Steam Deck, more so to limit frame rate as well as optimize battery life. So in theory, quite a few games could run at 60 FPS, but if you are totally okay with it, you could in fact run these games at 30 FPS instead, and you could get a substantial battery boost. I would say it's a pretty decent system, except for one thing. It's a system-wide feature that you have to muck around with every single time you want to change games. Depending how balls deep you want to get into the system, it becomes a pain and a chore every time you want to switch to a different game. And due to the wide variance in game performance, you will have to switch frame rate limiters, TDP, GPU performance, and many other features every single time you want to switch games. Let's say, for example, you want to switch between an epic single-player game that you can play in 30 FPS to a fighting game that you have to play in 60 FPS, especially if that fighting game's frame rate data is based on the assumption that you will be running this at 60 FPS at all times. Now let's magnify this by multiple hundreds, maybe even thousands of games that you may have in your Steam library, especially if you have a healthy mix of indie games as well as AAA games. Valve really ought to let you save these performance tweaks per game. Like you're running this game again, it'll automatically load the power performance settings that you used last time for this game. And then, if you switch to a different game, it'll switch to a different performance setting as well. The next one's a simple suggestion. The ability to move your keyboard around. So currently, your on-screen keyboard is in a fixed location, and it takes about half of your screen up. So in the past, the Steam keyboard could be a floating menu, and you could actually put it in different positions by pressing X while the keyboard is still up. They also reintroduced dual trackpad typing, which is a huge boon. The issue then comes from the fact that the keyboard will occasionally just obscure in-game elements. Want to respond to a message in the chat bar and the chat bar is in the bottom left or bottom right corners of the screen? Good luck, dude. One such solution would be to allow the keyboard to come from the top of the screen instead of the bottom of the screen, or even the sides if you prefer. It really depends on what game you're trying to play, so the ultimate solution would be to allow the player to orient the keyboard however they wish, whenever they need it. Next on the list is repeated shader cache downloads. So for whatever reason, the Steam Deck likes to re-download these shader caches over and over again, even if you've already updated the game. The unfortunate truth is that without these shader caches, the Steam Deck becomes a stuttery mess. And I'm totally fine with downloading these shader caches. I'm just not okay with it having to download shader caches every time you reboot the device. Surely there's some way for Valve to make these shader caches good between reboots, right? This also applies to regular old Linux as well. Plugging the deck in as a mass USB storage device. What do I mean by this? Well, I plug my Steam Deck into a computer directly and have it read as a USB mass storage device. You know, kind of like your standard portable hard drive. There are a ton of third-party utilities that you can use to transfer files directly from your PC to the Steam Deck wirelessly. And those are cool and all, but I would like the convenience of just having a USB-C cable and transferring files. A potential use case for this would be to transfer games from your main PC to your Steam Deck without having to re-download it. Android phones these days have something called Media Transfer Protocol, aka MTP. There's no precedent for any PC to PC connections using MTP, but given the unique status of the Steam Deck, I don't see how it couldn't be implemented, especially for file transfers. Next is more of a security concern, the lock screen, or lack thereof rather. If you're a Steam Deck owner that plays theirs in public, you probably want some sort of lock screen so that in case someone mugs you or steals your Steam Deck, they don't have access to your Steam account. Especially if you have your payment information saved on there, or perhaps, you know, you have valuable CSGO knives. Ideally, I would like to have multiple options in order to unlock my device. I would like to be able to either set up a password, set up a PIN number, set up a pattern similar to Android, or perhaps the most exciting feature, setting up some sort of cheat code that you have to enter in order to enter your own device. Novel concept, eh? And of course, an option for you guys that don't want to use passwords at all. Next is parity with the old Steam input system. For the most part, Steam input is still as good as it was before, but there's a few missing niceties from the old Steam input system. Mode shifting for one, as well as the ability to rename your actions, and, finally, assigning icons to said actions. And there's probably more missing too, but I'd have to really explore it. You wanna know what really pisses me off? When new versions of things aren't as good as the old versions of things. I'm really hoping that these features aren't just gone forever. Before we get to the heavy hitters, let's talk about system stability. The Steam Deck is a pretty good system, but it's also not the most stable system. The UI will just randomly freeze sometimes, especially during a download. There was also one time the Steam Deck also said we had 2 SD cards after uninstalling a game. Kinda wish we recorded that, but whatever. And the only way to fix this is to restart your entire system. This, combined with the fact that you have to re-download shaders every time you have to reboot, it's really annoying. That said, a lot of the issues we encountered happened on our 64GB unit, so I'm not sure if this happens on the higher end SKUs or not. There's also a lot of weird crashes that are reported on the subreddit, though without proper bug reports, I really couldn't tell you what's going on. Clips like this, trying to pull up the emoji keyboard in the Wi-Fi password screen crashes the Steam Deck. This one's a big feature for me. Customization, personalization, whatever you like to call it. 3 words. Steam Deck themes. I mean, the proposition is quite simple, really. The UI is quite slick, but I would love to customize it. Instead of like this drab gray color, I could make it whatever color I wanted. I could maybe even have like a little background here. I don't know. Custom sound effects too? Who knows? That said, I don't know if anyone's actually modded it or even have tried to mod it in a theme, but given the fact that you can mod the quick access menu, it might only be a matter of time until we find out how to mod this. But as always, official Valve support for Steam Deck themes would be much appreciated. It would certainly be a lot better than like, you know, a third-party hacky method of getting Steam Deck themes, you know? Finally, the most requested feature I can think of is the ability to move all of your Proton compatibility files and shaders to your SD card. There's a reason why Valve stores all of the stuff on the SSD, because it's a lot faster. How do you think Valve managed to get decent loading times from an SD card? Even that dingy little 64GB eMMC drive is quite a bit faster than your average SD card. The main reason why people want this feature in particular is because, well, simply put, this stuff takes up a lot of space. I've seen pictures of people's entire 64GB Steam decks just filled to the brim with nothing but compatibility data and shaders. Not a single game was installed on those drives. It seems fairly obvious that many people are willing to compromise on the speeds if they were just allowed to move all of their shaders and compatibility data onto that SD card. You can actually do so by moving all of your Proton prefix data to the SD card and then creating a symlink on the SSD. Though that's not a perfect solution, and it's also not the most user-friendly solution as well. And this is all before extensive testing has been done with this method. This is probably worth testing. We at High Tech Lowlife will probably try testing this out to see how much of a detriment this is to your performance.